So this interlude gives us a picture of the battle between good and evil. Satan's aim is to frustrate God's rule and destroy God's people. Chapter 12 describes this spiritual warfare. It assures God's people that no matter how fierce the battle gets, Satan has already been conquered by the blood of the Lamb. Let's read the whole chapter here, chapter 12. A great and wondrous sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on his heads. His tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that he might devour her child the moment it was born. She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. And her child was snatched up to God and to his throne. The woman fled into the desert to a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care of for 1,260 days. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth and the angels with him. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven say, "Now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ. For the accuser of our brothers, who accuses them before our God day and night, has been hurled down. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury, because he knows that his time is short." When the dragon saw that he had been hurled to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. The woman was given the 2 wings of a great eagle, so that she might fly to the place prepared for her in the desert, where she would be taken care of for a time, times, and half a time, out of the serpent's reach. Then from his mouth the serpent spewed water like a river to overtake the woman and sweep her away with the torrent. But the earth helped the woman by opening its mouth and swallowing the river that the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. Then the dragon was enraged at the woman and went off to make war against the rest of her offspring, those who obey God's commands and hold to the testimony of Jesus. And the dragon stood on the shore of the sea. Okay. I'm going to read the first couple verses to you again. A great and wondrous sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. At first glance, when we read this, it seems like we're talking about Mary here being the mother of Jesus. But when we get into all this symbolism of the being clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet and the 12 having a crown with 12 stars in it, this is a parallel with Revelation 37, 9, 10. And when we read that, it was about Joseph's dream. And we find when we read this that this is really symbolic of Israel, that the 12 stars stand for the 12 tribes of Israel. Would someone read Revelation 37, 9 and 10, please?
Revelation?
Excuse me, Genesis 37, 9 and 10. I'm in Revelation.
Genesis 37, 9 and 10. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I have another dream, and this time the sun, moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?"
Now the reason there's 11 stars, of course, is because Joseph is telling the dream. He would be included as having the 12 stars here. So Although this woman that we're going to be discussing here is alluding to Israel and Mary, it has a broader meaning that will come out later. The woman seems to transition into the people of God, or the true Israel, which is the church. She's beautiful and clothed with the brilliant light of the sun. This could be symbolic of her holding out the light of the gospel to a darkened world. The moon under her feet could also be symbolizing her dominion and power to reign in life. And the crown speaks of her royalty and contrast to the whore Babylon in chapter 17. Pain to give birth is full of symbolic meaning too. Every woman that gives birth is in labor, has pain in giving birth, so there's more to it than just that. It symbolizes the constant longing and waiting for the Messiah, the consolation of Israel. Would someone read Luke 2:25, please?
Now there was a man in Jerusalem called Simeon, who was righteous and devout. He was waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was upon him.
This huge red dragon is, of course, Satan, as we can see in verse 9 that follows. The red is probably symbolic of being one who sheds blood. Again, we have the number 7 with 7 heads and 7 diadems on the dragon. This is probably symbolic of having complete worldwide authority. The 10 horns symbolize the great strength and power of the dragon. The fourth beast described in Daniel 7 is a parallel figure to this dragon. Let's read verse 4 now. His tail swept a third of the stars. I'm talking about the dragon. His tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that he might devour her child the moment it was born. There are different interpretations as what the significance is of its tail sweeping away a third of the stars. Some people believe that when Satan was thrown out of heaven and took a third of the stars symbolize the dragon's enemies, whom he subdues, whether it's angels or believers. And the third possibility is just a description of his great power. It could be any one of these three. I prefer myself. A third of the angels falling with him when he was cast out of heaven. The child whom Satan wants to devour is obviously referring to Jesus. We think of the Roman soldiers going to Bethlehem to kill the male babies 2 years old and under, when it says he was waiting there to devour the child when he was born. I don't know why he didn't just devour the mother and he could have solved the whole problem. But that's apocalyptic scripture for you.
The mother wasn't God.
Wasn't what?
God.
No, but if he got the mother, he would have got God too, right?
Well, what would they do? The men don't do house cleaning and they don't do cooking, so they need the women, well, at least for that.
Okay. The child is destined, by the way, Sean, glad to see you back. The child is destined to rule all the nations with an iron scepter. This is a parallel with Psalm 2, 8, and 9. Would someone read that, please?
Ask of me, and I will surely give the nations as thine inheritance, and the very ends of the earth as thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron, thou shalt shatter them like earthenware.
As a shepherd defends his flock against the wild beasts of prey, so Christ will strike the nations that oppress and persecute his church. This picture of the child being snatched up, we read that, and her child was snatched up to God and to his throne. This picture of him being snatched up sounds like he's being rescued, but that's not really the case here. This is just a brief statement of he was born and he went to heaven. So they've just cut through all the, they've just telescoped it to from the birth to the resurrection. When Christ went up to heaven, it wasn't because he was just trying to escape. He went up to heaven because his going up to heaven was a sign of his victory over Satan. Let's read on verse 6 here. The woman fled into the desert to a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care of for 1,260 days. Most dispensationalists think that the church has already been raptured. Therefore, the woman here stands for Jewish believers who will flee the persecution of the Antichrist and go into the desert for a literal 1,260 days just before the Lord comes back. Another possibility is that the flight of the woman into the desert is an early fulfillment when the Jewish Christians in Jerusalem fled Jerusalem in AD 66 when there was the Roman Jewish war started, and they were in a place called Pella in the wilderness, and then Jerusalem and the temple were destroyed in AD 70. This might be a type, but this I don't believe is the solution to the problem here. I think the primary fulfillment seems to be true Israel, the people of God, the saints, who have been suffering persecution and death since the time of Christ. The flight into the wilderness isn't the primary point. The most important point of this is how God nourishes the church in her trials and how the church is utterly dependent upon him for everything. We think of the wilderness as a lonely, dangerous place, but in certain contexts like this here, it doesn't have a bad connotation, the wilderness. It's a place that God has prepared for the church. God says in Hosea 2:14 about the people of God, I am going to allure her, I will lead her into the desert and speak tenderly to her. In this context, the wilderness speaks of God's divine care, provision, and intimate fellowship. Like I've said over and over, the 1,260 days is that time between the first coming and the second coming. It's symbolic of that time. So God has a place prepared for us where it says that, is it here where it says that, it does, we'll get to that later. Okay, so now we got through verse 6 now, and we're going to, and when we go through verses 7 through 17, this is a cycle. We're going over the same thing again with a little bit more detail. And this is typical Jewish way of writing in cycles. We're going to get back to this child and the wilderness and all that stuff again. It's another cycle about Christ's victory and the dragon's ongoing attempt to destroy God's people. Let's read 7 through 12. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven say, now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ. For the accuser of our brothers, who accuses them before our God day and night, has been hurled down. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury, because he knows that his time is short. Trying to put a time frame on this, where we say this war in heaven went on between Michael and the angel, that isn't significant. It doesn't really matter when this happens. The important thing is that the dragon was defeated. But this is just a sort of a minor defeat in a sense, because the real defeat came when Christ died on the cross. That's when when the real victory came. This is part of the victory, where Michael fought with the dragon and threw him out of heaven. But the major victory was fought at the cross and won at the cross. The ancient serpent, it says here, has led the whole world astray. But we can rejoice, because even though we were led astray, the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the ruling authority of the Christ have now come, because Satan has been defeated. Satan's accusations against us are now frustrated. We can defeat him now, not by our strength or goodness, but through the blood of the Lamb. We are justified and sanctified before God because of the cross. The second means of our victory is our testimony to the fact that we've been saved by the blood of Jesus. We are willing to bear witness to this, even if it results in our death. You know, many commentators like to relegate this part that I just read to the sweet by and pie in the sky. It's a shame when they do that, because here Satan has been thrown down from heaven, defeated on the cross, and now has come our salvation. Please, let's not read this for the future. We've been made a kingdom and priests to serve our God, and we are now reigning on the earth, according to Revelation 5:9. Romans 5:17 says, we have received God's abundant provision of grace and the gift of righteousness, that we should reign in life through the one man, Jesus Christ. When did salvation come to us? It says here, salvation is come. When did we get power to defeat the enemy? When did we enter the kingdom of God? When was Satan hurled down, if not at the cross? When Jesus died on the cross. If we haven't been overcoming by the blood of the Lamb by now, then Christ just died in vain. Verse 12 says, therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury, because he knows that his time is short. This tells us that even though Satan has been overthrown, he has not been destroyed. He's filled with anger because he knows that his doom is sealed. He's still allowed to exercise his great power. He may be the cause of our death, but he doesn't have the power to make us deny our faith or turn our backs on Jesus. Let's go on to verse 13. When the dragon saw that he had been hurled to the earth, he pursued the woman who had been given birth to the male child. The woman was given the 2 wings of a great eagle, so that she might fly to the place prepared for her in the desert, where she would be taken care of for a time, times, and half a time, out of the serpent's reach. This is very symbolic language here, where she's given 2 wings to go away. Trying to figure that out is anybody's guess, but the important picture to get is that the church will be spiritually secure, cared for, and not forgotten by God.
There's that scripture that says, those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength, they spring out like wings on wings like eagles.
Mm-hmm. So what significance would you put on that for this?
Renewed strength.
He will strengthen us, right? Yeah. What the wilderness represents, again, like I said, is a place of communion with God, intimacy, fellowship, where God cares for us and provides for us. It says where we're out of the reach of, it says, where they're out of the reach of Satan. We'll never be out of the reach of Satan. But we're talking here about a spiritual place where we meet with, where we're with God, and we have that close communion with God. The devil can't touch us when we're in that place of close union and relationship with God.
Aren't we there right now?
Yeah, we are. That's right.
Well, then, on the portion, he's filled with fury because he knows his time is short.
Yeah,
Well, that time would have started at the cross,
right,
till now, till
right.
the end.
That's correct.
So that would be from the cross till the end.
Right,
So that time is from then to then. So the end was from then to then.
that's right. A lot of times, in fact, we'll get to a verse in 1 John where it says, this is the last hour, and even though you've heard that the Antichrist is coming, there are right now many Antichrists. Okay, it says this is the last hour. Well, John wrote that 2,000 years ago in 1 John, right? He says this is the last hour. So in prophetic speaking, or in God's timetable, we are in the end times right now. We are in the last days right now. In the last hour right now. It's looking more and more like that as the days go by, too.
We believe in that.
Along with your support of that, the various footnotes here in the study Bible gives different ones for different possibilities, just like you do.
Right,
And along that line, it's much more happened at Christ's birth, death, and resurrection than most people realize. A war between the forces of good and evil was underway, and with Christ's resurrection, Satan's ultimate defeat was assured. Some believe that Satan's fall to earth took place at Jesus' resurrection or ascension, and that the 1,260 days at 3.5 years is a symbolic way of referring to the time between Christ's first and second comings.
I like it, I love it.
I thought you would. I thought you would.
Who said that?
This
You.
one, yeah, this is
Sorry.
New International, and
Oh, yeah.
most of your viewpoint is shared by,
NIV,
yeah,
Study Bible,
yeah.
great,
And it also gives different views,
right,
but mostly it leans.
right, that's nice. When I think about going into this place where God has prepared for us, in the wilderness where we have that close union where Satan can't reach us, we're fortified in prayer and fortified with that love relationship that we have, ongoing relationship with us. The gates of hell can't prevail against us, even if we're taken out and burned at the stake. It looks like he reached us, but we really have the ultimate victory because of what we know we're going to be raised from the dead. And when I think about this part here about being in the wilderness and taken care of, it makes me think of Psalm 23, and I'd like to read that right now to you. The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. What a beautiful psalm. That's a psalm for living, not a psalm for dying. We read that prayer or that psalm at people's funerals, but it's really for us today, for the living. And like I said before, here we have, he prepared a place and cares for us for a time, times, and half a time, which is the same as 1,260 days, or 3.5 years.
Or 42 months.
Or 42 months, correct. Okay, now, in this part we were reading about, the Satan spewed out all this water and the ground swallowed it up. What time or what place or what's the, has an emphasis on the end times. He's calling beasts out of the sea all the time. out of the sea, it means just out of the sea of humanity. He just calls them up. I mean, we've had lots of them. Like I said earlier about 1 John 2:18 says, "Dear children, this is the last hour. And as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, even now many Antichrists have come." Notice John says, this is the last hour, like I said, which was 2,000 years ago. John 2:7, 2 John 7 says, "Many deceivers who do not acknowledge Jesus Christ as coming in the flesh have gone out into the world. Any such person is the deceiver and the Antichrist." Let's read chapter 13, starting with verse 2. "And I saw a beast coming out of the sea. He had 10 horns and 7 heads and 10 crowns on his horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was astonished and followed the beast. Men worshipped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast. And they also worshipped the beast and asked, 'Who is like the beast? Who can make war against him?' The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies and to exercise his authority for 42 months. He opened his mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. He was given power to make war against the saints and to conquer them. And he was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast. All those whose names have not been written in the book of life belonging to the Lamb that was slain from the creation of the world. He who has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is to go into captivity he will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword he will be killed. This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of the saints. Then I saw another beast coming out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, but he spoke like a dragon. He exercised all the authority of the first beast on his behalf, and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. And he performed great and miraculous signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to earth in full view of men. Because of the signs he was given power to do on behalf of the first beast, he deceived the inhabitants of the earth. He ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. He was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that it could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. He also forced everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or on his forehead, so that no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of his name. This calls for wisdom. If anyone has insight, let him calculate the number of the beast, for it is man's number. His number is 666. Now, if you're expecting me to make everything clear out of this one, good luck. Anyway, let's read, but we will get some understanding here, I hope. Here it goes. And I saw a beast coming out of the sea. He had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on his horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. This beast has 7 heads and 10 horns, just like the dragon that we read about in the last chapter. This shows their close relationship. The number 7 in apocalyptic literature, like we've seen before, carries the idea of completeness. So a 7-headed beast would be an appropriate symbol for the ultimate enemy of the church, or he works through all kingdoms. In this context, the blasphemous names on the heads would be a name that attributes deity to itself. It has a blasphemous name on its head. And There's only one God, and it is blasphemous for any man to claim to be God. This is why the Pharisees accused Jesus of blasphemy, because he equated himself with God. The beast resembles all four beasts that Daniel saw come up out of the sea. Let's read Daniel 7, verses 1 through 8. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream, and visions passed through his mind as he was lying on his bed. He wrote down the substance of his dream. Daniel said, "In my vision at night I looked, and there before me were the four winds of heaven churning up the great sea. Four great beasts, each different from the others, came up out of the sea. The first was like a lion, and it had the wings of an eagle. I watched until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground so that it stood on 2 feet like a man, and the heart of a man was given to it. And there before me was a second beast, which looked like a bear. It was raised up on its sides, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, 'Get up and eat your fill of flesh.' After that I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard, and on its back it had 4 wings like those of a bird. This beast had 4 heads, and was given authority to rule. After that, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was a 4th beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all the former beasts, and it had 10 horns. While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth that spoke boastfully." The first beast here, remember in Revelation here when we were talking about the beast that came out of the sea, it said it had, it described parts of it being like a lion, parts of it being like a bear, parts of it like leopard, right. And so the first beast here in Daniel is believed by most to be the Babylon Empire under Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar, where it says its wings were in verse its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground so that it stood on 2 feet like a man. Nebuchadnezzar sort of had his wings plucked off, so to speak, and was transformed into a mere man, if you recall his humbling situation in Daniel 4, where he's down on his all fours, barking at the moon or whatever. And the second beast is believed to be the Medo-Persian Empire that followed. The 3 ribs in its mouth were possibly the 3 countries that the empire conquered, which were Babylon, Lydia, and Egypt. The third beast was like a leopard and had 4 wings. This speaks of speed and ferocity. This is believed to be Alexander the Great, who conquered the known world by the age of 32. After his death, his kingdom was divided among 4 of his generals. If you read that, it says, the beast had 4 heads. After his death, his kingdom was divided among 4 of his generals. This would explain the beast having the 4 heads. And this explains Daniel 8:8. And let me read that to you real quick. It says, "The goat became very great, but at the height of his power, his large horn was broken off, and in its place 4 prominent horns grew up toward the 4 winds of heaven." So again, that's just reiterating what we just said. The 4th beast cannot be described in terms of earthly animals. It was terrifying and dreadful and incredibly strong. It was different from the other beasts before it, and it had 10 horns, symbolic of great power. This empire is believed to be the Roman Empire in John's day. The point I'm trying to make through all this is that those beasts symbolized kingdoms So the beast with 7 heads here in chapter 13 represents every Antichrist empire that demands absolute allegiance by its citizens or else face death. Daniel goes on to say in verse 8 that we just read that he saw a little horn come out from the 10 horns. In this horn were the eyes of a man and a mouth speaking great things. If we go on to verse 21, it says, this horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them until the Ancient of Days came. And as we read earlier, that this beast in Revelation that we're reading makes war with the saints. So this little horn is also a type of the beast that we're talking here. And there's been lots of little horns that have come up. Antiochus Epiphanes is one before Christ came around 135 BC, somewhere around there. And he just came into Jerusalem and slaughtered a pig in the temple and wouldn't allow, killed 80,000 Jews, men, women, and children, and proclaimed himself to be like God and all these things. He is the type or the prototype of this beast we're talking about here in chapter 11. But like I'm saying, this little horn will surface again and again throughout history. Nero would be another one. Futurists and dispensationalists believe this first beast that comes out of the sea is the little horn in Daniel and will be a future political world leader. And the second beast that comes out of the earth that we read earlier is his religious counterpart who enforces worship of the first beast. Let's read verse 3 now here in chapter 13. I just want to reiterate here that when it describes this beast, and it says he's like a leopard or bear and all this, that this beast has all the characteristics of evil that all the other kingdoms had. And so the beast just represents, like I said earlier, it's probably a real Antichrist at the end times, but it's also all the other Antichrists that have always been. Verse 3 here, this is really a puzzling one. It says, one of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was astonished and followed the beast. I just read a book about this guy. He had a word from the Lord, and he's convinced he knows who the beast is. And he goes into detail in this book who it is. And he says that it's the United States of America, and that the false prophet is the media, the propaganda, and everything. And he said when the head was wounded, one of its heads was wounded, was when Pearl Harbor was bombed. And it makes some sense. I'm not getting on the bandwagon totally here, but when Pearl Harbor was bombed, if you recall, people were looking at the United States and going, well, it's doomed, you know. It's kind of, they're really hurt big time. But then it seemed to come back alive and defeated Germany, Italy, and Japan. And all the nations of the world, in a sense, started following the United States and worshiping the United States, so to speak. And so it does fit a lot of things here. I'm not saying that it is the United States, but they said the same thing about Nero. Nero committed suicide, and when he did, the Roman Empire felt, it seemed like it was going to go down the tubes. But then later on, there were other rulers like Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian who followed Nero, and they gained back their power again. So there's lots of types that we could probably look back in history where this type of a thing where the head is wounded and it seems like there's, you know, and then it comes back to life again. Now the dispensationalists, of course, believe that in the end times there's going to be a political figure, and I'm not saying they're wrong, I'm just saying, just so you know their point of view. There's going to be a political figure that's going to come on the rise, a world type ruler, and he may get shot in the head or something along that line and come back to life miraculously. And this will be an imitation of, a cheap imitation of with Christ, you know, that died and came back to life. As we go on with this study of the beast in Revelation, we see several antitheses. The Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, has an antithesis in the false Trinity, the dragon, the beast, and the second beast, or the false prophet. The Lamb, standing as though it has been slain, has an antithesis in the seven-headed beast with the mortal wound healed. The sealing of the saints has an antithesis in the mark of the beast. And the bride in white has an antithesis in the prostitute Babylon, dressed in purple and scarlet. Let's go on to, there's more than those. There's several others besides those, but I just thought I'd bring those to your attention. Men worshiped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast. And they also worshiped the beast and asked, who is like the beast? Who can make war against him? The worshippers' question copies Israel's praise of the Lord after the Exodus. Would someone read Exodus 15:11?
Who among the gods is like you, O Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working wonders?
See, this is a cheap shot at God here, taking glory from God here by saying, who is like the beast, you know? Who can make war against him? They're equating him as being so godly and great, being like God, you know? And even the Roman emperors, when they would come into cities, people would shout out and say things like that about the Roman emperors, who is like them, who can stand, who can war against them. When it says he was given a mouth to say great things and blasphemies, it means that God has allowed this. He was given the ability to do that. This is in line with what we read about the little horn in Daniel. It is also allowed to do its dastardly deeds and for 42 months and to speak blasphemies about the Lord. Dispensationalists would say that this is a literal, it says here for 42 months, right?
Right.
The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies and to exercise his authority for 42 months. Dispensationalists would say this is probably the last 3.5 years of the 7-year tribulation, just before Christ comes back, that this world ruler will be doing this. Others believe this has always been referring to the 42 months, like I said, from the first coming to the second coming, that there's always been Antichrist speaking blasphemies and putting God down since Jesus rose from the dead. Going to verse 6. He opened his mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. When it says slander his dwelling place and those who live in heaven, in Greek, whenever you have an in a construction like this, it can also mean that is, and clarify what you just said. So this could also mean in his dwelling place, that is, those who live in heaven. And even if it isn't talking about his dwelling place, we are his dwelling place. So And we live in the heavenly city. We are citizens of the heavenly city. So that when it says he is able to slander the dwelling place and those who live in heaven, it's talking about the church there. Not talking about, it's not going to do him any good to slander angels up in heaven or something along that line. It's just figurative speech for saying that. He was given power to make war against the saints and to conquer them, and he was given authority over every tribe, people, language, nation. It will seem like that he has conquered us, like I said earlier, when Christians are being persecuted and killed for their faith, but it's a short-lived victory. It's only a temporary victory. He conquers us temporarily, but we have the ultimate victory, and because we'll be raised from the dead. All inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all those whose names have not been written in the book of life belonging to the Lamb that was slain from the creation of the world. This verse presents a little bit of an exegetical problem. Some of your Bibles probably say, in the Greek it's not clear if what was written before the foundation of the earth, or when that the Lamb was slain before the foundation of the world. If you have an NIV version, it says the Lamb that was slain from the creation of the world. But if you have any other version besides the King James, it would say there that all those whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world. Do you see the difference I'm trying to make here? That this isn't a biggie here, but from the foundation of the world can go with their names weren't written from the foundation, or the Lamb that was slain from the foundation of the world. NIV and King James, the only two versions I know of that go this way. These are the kinds of problems we have as translators. Which way do you go when you're translating something like this? Does someone have a different version than the NIV on this? Or King James? Different than King James or NIV? Huh? What? Amplified. What does it say? What does it say? What about the foundation? Okay, it goes with the NIV. Well, anyway, there's support, great support. What verse are we on here?
8.
Oh yeah. 1 Peter 1:20 says, Jesus was chosen to redeem mankind before the foundation of the world. So this would support the view that that the Lamb that was slain before the foundation of the world. And on the other hand, in Revelation 17:8, it says, the inhabitants of the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world. So you've got Revelation 17:8 that says it's that it was written, their names were not written since the foundation of the world. And you have 1 Peter 1:20 that supports the other one.
Excuse me.
Yes.
The question that is the problem is that when you say the Lamb was slain from the foundation of the world, then that means that he was slain way back there, not when he was slain. And that's the problem that is created. You either have to say he was destined before the creation of the world to be slain.
Right.
But he wasn't actually slain then, because we know when he was slain.
And when you're translating it in Moplin or something like that, and if you choose he was slain from the foundation, what do you have to say? That was destined before the foundation of the world to be slain. He was destined before the foundation of the world to be slain. You have to put that implied information in there, because it doesn't make sense to say Jesus wasn't slain before the foundation of the world, right?
In the message, it says, everyone on earth whose name was not written from the world's foundation
Yeah,
in the slaughtered lamb's book of life
Yeah.
will worship the beast.
right, it's taking the other one, the opposite of the NIV. ESV takes the opposite, and most of your other versions take the opposite too. What do you do when you're a translator and you have a choice like this, and they're equally, it could be either one as far as the Greek's concerned? Well, what you do in a situation like that is, if they both make sense, you take the majority view. If one of them doesn't make sense, then you take the minority view. And then to really cover your backside, you put a footnote and give the other version. Cover all the base.
While we're still in this area,
Right.
I thought it was interesting to note that it said he opened his mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies and to exercise his authority for 42 months. And he opened his mouth to blaspheme God and slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. And then that's kind of the same thing that it says about the dragon. He opened his mouth and spewed water like a river.
Mhm.
So, and it's for the same span of time, 3.5 years.
Mhm.
So that there's the dragons opening his mouth and spewing water like a river.
Mhm.
And then here we have the beast opening his mouth, and then it kind of delineates what exactly the water
That's
like
good, that's a
river
good
is.
insight. Yeah, that gives you an insight possibly of what, when he spewed out that water.
Has to do with words.
Yeah, where it has to do with words. Not,
That would be-
it's a good insight. Verse 9 tells us to take heed. Take heed to what? What was just said before, or what's gonna follow?
Oh,
Best bet is just to go with both. Take heed to what was said before and take heed to what's gonna follow, then you don't have to worry about it. Verse 10 says, because you're gonna get arguments on both sides. If anyone is to go into captivity, led into captivity he will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword he will be killed. Now, does that sound like a pre-trib rapture to you? Doesn't sound like it to me either. Here, dispensationalists are forced to say the saints here are ones that come to the Lord after the church has been raptured.
Yeah.
Again, they're making an assumption that isn't even implied. As grim as this sounds, God is giving them an assurance when he says, into captivity you'll go, and if anyone is to be killed with the sword you'll be killed. God is giving us an assurance here in this, that he's got everything under control, that nothing's going to happen to you that's not according to his plan, even though it doesn't say that. That's the implied information. That if we're going to go into captivity, well, we go into captivity if we're going to get killed, but God's got it all under control. This calls for endurance and faith. Right? It says right there, this calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of the saints. We were raptured, so the saints shouldn't be there, right? Okay. Okay, let's go on. Then I saw another beast coming out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, but he spoke like a dragon. He exercised all the authority of the first beast on his behalf, and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. Someone who is in charge of either a false religion or false propaganda or media set up to get people to worship the first beast. That's why the second beast, this second beast we're reading about right now, is later on in Revelation called the false prophet. Jesus said in Matthew 7:15, watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. The second beast completes the trinity of evil that parallels the Holy Trinity. As the Father gives authority to the Son, so the dragon gives authority to the first beast. As the Holy Spirit honors the Son, so the second beast honors the first beast. This second beast is under the authority of the first beast. He gets his power from the first beast. He said. And he performed great and miraculous signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to earth in full view of men. Because of the signs he was given power to do on behalf of the first beast, he deceived the inhabitants of the earth. He ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. Matthew 24:24 tells us to beware of such false prophets. Would somebody read this?
For false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and miracles to deceive even the elect, if that were possible.
2 Thessalonians 2:9 and 10 says, the coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with the work of Satan, displayed in all kinds of counterfeit miracles, signs and wonders, and in every sort of evil that deceives those who are perishing. Again, in Revelation, the ones dwelling on the earth are those who reject Christ, as it says here in verse the ones dwelling on the earth. Yeah, verse 14. They're easily persuaded, those who dwell on the earth, the pagans, they're easily persuaded to make an image or statue of the first beast, especially since he seemed to be dead and yet came to life again. And secondly, they see many miracles done by the second beast with power given to it by the first beast, who gets his power from Satan. The second beast calls down fire from heaven, just like Elijah did. As a false Elijah, he prepares the way for a false Messiah, which is the Antichrist. Those who fail to worship the image of the beast will be killed like those who refused to worship the statue that Nebuchadnezzar had made in Daniel 3. See, we see patterns of Antichrist and the same goings, statues and the like through history. It's not just a one-time thing. Let's see here. He also forced everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or on his forehead, so that no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of his name. The people in Revelation 7:3, the people were marked on their foreheads. The people of God were marked on their foreheads, sealed. However, the beast has his mark too. He has his counter mark. Again, here's the antithesis here. This mark, it may be a literal mark, or it may be a chip under your hand or on your forehead, or it just may be a spiritual mark, a heart issue whereby one shows that he's loyal to the Antichrist. The hand could be symbolic of actions, and the head could be symbolic of thoughts, and thus our thoughts and actions are devoted to doing the will of the Antichrist. It could be a number in a computer that shows our loyalty to the Antichrist or the world Antichrist power. And without that number, we can't buy or sell anything. This could cause many to bow the knee to the Antichrist. Linsky says this buying and selling isn't supposed to be taken literally, but implies that Christians are often discriminated against and suffer economically because of declaring Christ as their Lord. How well do Christian converts do when buying and selling in Iran, in Iraq, or Turkey, or Israel, or Pakistan, or Egypt, or Syria, and in major parts of Indonesia, India, and China? Linsky cites Christian scientists and authors who go against evolution and have a hard time publishing the materials. They're finding jobs in secular universities. This makes me think of the church in Smyrna that we read about in the 2nd chapter. And he goes, I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich. I doubt they were poor because they were lazy. They were poor because people just didn't want to do business with them. I can remember about 3 years ago, I was in Estes Park on vacation with my family. And I went down, it's a tourist town. And I went downtown, and it's just lined with little curio stores, one right after another, just selling fluff. And I had brought my Mapum bracelets that I try to sell for the Mapum people, and went from store to store, and did pretty good. I think I sold 700 bracelets in one day. But I walked into one store and I had my little brochure and everything in my bag of bracelets, and I was talking to the owner of the store, and she was really happy. I mean, really interested in the bracelets. She was looking them over, and I thought to myself, here's a good and easy sell, you know. And but then when I handed her the brochure and told her that we were Christians and we were had a Christian ministry and everything like that, she says, "You're a Christian? Get out of my store right now!" And you know, she just, I had to get up and just leave, you know, right then. So anyway, I could see a place where this, more likely than not, is probably a literal mark on our hand or forehead or a chip or that type of thing, but it might not be, and so we want to be open for both possibilities. If we want to get technical here, we all have credit cards and debit cards, right? Now,
Yeah, but that can be stolen.
well, that's not my point. My point is that what if they said, let's just put your credit card on your hand or on your chip on your forehead or on your hand. It can't get stolen that way. Well,
At what point?
What I want to say is, would there be any difference as far as our commitment to the Lord Jesus is concerned? If they said, do you want to put a chip on your hand and everything like that? I don't think so, but I'm not going to get the chip anyway.
All the numbers that run.
I'm not going to take a chance.
They already have the technology.
Really though, when you look at it, all I'm saying is, if they said tomorrow, you got it, we're putting a chip on your hand, it's harmless and it won't hurt.
That is
And,
almost routine measure.
Probably lying.
but then, you know, but it won't get stolen and all this. I'm not getting the chip. Even though it wouldn't make any difference as far as my heart goes with the Lord, but, you know, I'm not going to take the chance. The chip,
How about in your wallet?
you cut your hand off. Huh?
That's why I put it in the head, because it's hard to run around with a bag of hands.
Okay, verse 18. Verse 18 says, this calls for wisdom. If anyone has insight, let him calculate the number of the beast, for it's man's number. His number is 666. There's much debate as to what this means. It says, if anyone has wisdom or insight, let him calculate the number of the beast. For it's man's number. His number is 666. The primary question we have to ask to get started on this is 666 a specific man's number, or is 666 man's number? Now, depending on your translations, some say a man's number and some say man's number. In the Greek, it could be either one.
The number of man.
The number of man, is it the number of man or is it a man's number? That's what your translation says, but NIV says it's man's number, right?
Mine has an asterisk, it says, word of man.
Oh, what?
Covers it both ways.
See,
The number of a man, asterisk, or of a man.
Well, you know, we had to make this decision in our translation in Mapum. You know, what are you going to do? You know, yeah. And so, fortunately, and this seldom happens, very seldom, we have a word for mankind that means human or mankind, and it also can mean a man, either way. And so we used it and left it ambiguous and let them try to figure it out too. But there, most people, many scholars believe this is the number of a specific man. And so they try to figure it out how to calculate with insight and wisdom who this is. And all the way back to the early church, there was a method called gematria. And that's a Greek word. It comes from the Greek word geometria, which they probably get the word geometry from. And with this method, you put numbers to the alphabet, to the Greek alphabet.